I'm here with Travis Pangburn. Pangburn Philosophy has done several events with Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris. You've also done events with Matt Dillahunty, I think, and Richard Dawkins. I think you have an event coming up with Richard Dawkins and Brett Weinstein. Is that correct?
Yeah, they'll be talking evolution for the first time. So I'm very excited for that one.
So thank you for saying yes to an interview. It's really cool to be able to talk to you. I know you're getting from my end, just as a YouTuber, I know a lot of people are upset with you over the release of the Jordan Peterson Sam Harris debates because it's taken so long to get them out. Jordan Peterson, I don't know if you saw this, but Jordan Peterson made a comment in his September Q&A, Patreon Q&A a few days ago, and actually said that it was difficult because nobody really thought ahead on the videos, and that they were, you guys kind of got in this three-way trade deal after the fact. Can you say anything about that, or is it all just?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak a little bit to that. There's first of all, there's many different opinions that come into the decision making behind releasing content like this, and so I'm essentially usually the middleman, trying to make everyone happy from the author perspective and the author's representatives. So it's a big juggling match, and then we also want to do right by the fans and get them the content. It's never a guarantee, and this is something I made clear in my Q&A that I recently did with fans, that it's never a guarantee that an author is going to agree to be filmed in a live event or a live speaker, because some of them don't want their content filmed because they speak live for a living. So it's never even a guarantee that we're going to be able to film or even just record audio of these events. So I'm sorry.
We're recording, so it's not a big deal. If there's interruptions, I can cut it out.
And the fact that we're just able to create this content and record it is kind of out of the norm from what is expected from some authors and some speakers. So we got to that point. We put it in all of our speakers' contracts now that we do want to record all of these events, and there are some speakers that refuse to do events with us because of that fact. And then, as far as
you don't have to give any names, but that's kind of interesting. Is it more they're afraid they're going to say something wrong and it's going to end up on social media, or what is the incentive?
I think they just value their content and what they have to say highly, and they want people to access their paid content in other ways. For instance, if Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing a live speaking event and he's talking about something that he just talked about on one of his TV programs, he would rather, if people want to see that, go watch the TV program rather than seeing the live event. And there needs to be some kind of thing that you get that's special if you're going to go pay a premium ticket price to see someone speak live. So I'm, when it gets to sometimes the video agreements are kind of in limbo to see how the events go. And for a high profile event like Peterson and Harris, there was a lot of indecisiveness from certain parties that I won't get into.
I know. But that's what everyone wants to know. We want to know who was the diva. Who was the diva?
Well, I will say that
no, actually, it's probably better if you don't say.
It's typically not the authors themselves. They're they're usually the ones
Oh.
that are like, right on, let's get that shit out there as soon as we can. Let's do what we have to do. If you guys need to make some money, put it behind a paywall for a while, that's fine. We'll support that. But yeah, let's just get it out there and give people an opportunity to access it because we think it was great. And that's usually the sentiment from the authors themselves or the speakers. But then the management
That's what I
bureaucracy,
the handlers come in. And,
yeah,
and
sure.
right,
And
Sam Harris is
rightfully so, from a certain sense. It's like, just because you're amazing intellect and you put great content out there, it might not be the best move when managing your brand to have this content released.
Yeah, I was going to say Sam Harris has been a brand for years and years now. Jordan Peterson is new to this being a brand, and I think he said in his Q&A, well, I don't know if I heard this in his Q&A or just from around. I mean, he shot up so quickly that, like, I don't think he had the kind of management that he has now when you actually started the negotiations here. How
Right.
did you put this all together? Which is, I got to tell you, that in and of itself is kind of a feat.
Yeah, it was interesting because I did the first deal. Well, Sam and I had been talking a lot about Jordan Peterson and how we saw that he was starting to grow. His fan base was starting to grow rather quickly, and we were keeping an eye on it because, Sam had the podcast that did not go well with Jordan, and with Jordan's growing fame, I was starting to see an opportunity for a large scale live event, and so was Sam. So we were watching it closely, and originally I was going to produce just one event in Vancouver, which we would do in a stadium atmosphere, kind of like we ended up doing in Dublin and London. But it turned out that I could get the Orpheum Theatre, and it would be a little bit less of a risk because I was able to get the premium hold on 2 dates in a row, which was kind of rare, but I found the perfect dates that could work for those events. So I signed Jordan for the first date before he had fallen into new representation.
Oh, wow.
So the negotiation for the second date was a hell of a lot different than the negotiation for the first date, because somewhere in between that time, the Kathy Newman interview happened.
Wow.
And
so you had Jordan Peterson booked for one day. The Kathy Newman interview happens, and Jordan Peterson just explodes.
Yeah, in fact, I had him booked also for the Matt Dillahunty event as well.
Okay.
And which happened in Toronto. And so yeah, the second day, when we put the first day on sale, it was very close to that time that the Kathy Newman, if I'm remembering correctly, that interview came out, and then I mean, Sam Harris already sells well on his own, and with the announcement, it just exploded. We sold out very quickly, and then I pulled the trigger on the second date. And then from there, I started thinking big. If we were going to go overseas with this, I wanted to do something special and world record breaking, and we ended up doing that.
So, as a producer, what is your highest risk? What is it that you're losing sleep over?
Well, I mean, it's just the actual dollars and cents of doing these events. The risk is destroying your brand financially by just for instance, like doing an event at the O2 in London. This is a $500,000 investment,
right?
And that level of investment, I don't think people understand that that's the financial level that it takes. And so I'm essentially risking a lot for not much, and the hope is that you either don't lose too much money or you you at least make a little bit of money to make this sustainable. And this is why we do the paywall for the videos and try to promote our Patreon account, because it helps with the hard costs of what it takes to run this kind of business.
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles where there's tons of independent producers. So you really put a lot on the line financially doing anything like this, doing really anything creative. So
sure. But I mean, ultimately, my philosophy is what's most important to me. Inspiring the world with artistic and scientific experiences, and eradicating anti-science and unreasonable behavior any way that I can. And these live events are a great way to do that. It's something something tangible you can point to, like the 8,500 turnout in Dublin, and say, hey, Dublin, look, it's popular to think here. So maybe those who are running for office should start building platforms based around critical thinking, and it might do you well to thoroughly think out your platforms and make sure that you're not just selling a bunch of hocus pocus to your people.
So you're in this more for a political motivation then?
Well, I would say philosophical. It's so the Pangburn philosophy is let art and science inspire. A lot of people don't know this yet, and they're starting to get to know what the philosophy is itself. But Pangburn philosophy is a life guide, essentially. Mm-hmm. You start with art and science as your founding sources of inspiration, and then you add things like like loved ones, things you accumulate, possessions, things like that after that. But I believe that starting with a foundation in art and science is what you have to do to be a fruitful human being, and that's kind of the basis of the philosophy. But my main goal for now is eradicating anti-science wherever I can around the world.
Right. So, but you are very much on the atheist side, on the Sam Harris side. I notice, I mean, one of the most interesting things of Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris have done 4 events. I've done my share of videos on there and done my best to try to drive people to your Patreon. So I want to see, I admire what you guys are doing. I want to see more and more of this. I am much more on the Jordan Peterson side than the Sam Harris side, but I don't see why. One of the beautiful things about Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris is the fact that they can have these conversations. And so much of our politics is so toxic these days that people are really afraid to even have these conversations. And though I'm not a huge Sam Harris fan in terms of the atheism, I think I side more with Jordan Peterson there. I listen to Sam Harris's podcast all the time. Like, he's done podcasts with Ezra Klein, which I consider to be kind of very much in this kind of social justice bubble. Sam Harris is not afraid to have conversations that other people are terrified to have, which I think is his strong point.
Yeah. I mean, I should, maybe I need to be more clear about this. I don't consider myself basically on the side of any perspective until I hear the argument laid out. So as far as the rope I give to Sam or the rope I give to Jordan, I would say it's all equal.
What do you mean rope? Like to hang themselves? I don't know.
No, not to hang themselves. Maybe let's say, what's a better way?
Yeah, I was
maybe
the
amount. Here's a better. I always joke with Eric Weinstein about the intellectual dark web should actually be entitled the intellectual warm blanket. So let's set up this analogy. If I happen to be sharing the bed with Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, I would award them each equal parts of the intellectual warm blanket that we were sharing. Now, the first guy to come up with a bad idea. And the way I figure out if it's a bad idea, I invoke my skepticism and scientific worldview and humanism to assess, and they get a little less blanket, but only until they discover that they're the ones in the bad idea position.
I don't think there's any problem taking sides. I don't mind people taking sides. The problem that I have is, I mean, there has to be a level of decorum. I've taken Jordan Peterson's side. I've done, I think, 3 videos now. I think I did a 4th today, and I'm very much on Jordan Peterson's side. I come to the debate really as a student of Jonathan Haidt, and Jonathan Haidt, I don't know if you've read The Righteous Mind, but he's fairly critical of Sam Harris in The Righteous Mind. So that's my perspective. But I think it's important to have a kind of decorum in these discussions, that we can debate these ideas. And one of the things that people are constantly raving about the clips that I posted is that Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris do have a level of decorum between themselves. Although some people are saying Sam Harris is going a little heavy-handed with the insults, but I don't necessarily know that Sam Harris knows that he's insulting people as much as he's like just playing to his audience. You know what I'm talking about? Like I
think people need to be less triggered when it comes to quote unquote insults.
I couldn't agree more.
I think
we're raising a bunch of babies here.
Yeah, people are just searching to be offended, hoping to be offended these days. And I just, when I do once in a while scan through comment sections on social media, I see crying babies all over the place. And I find it humorous, but I think we need to get over that, especially people who are intellectual and knowledge based enough to not have to put up, they shouldn't be acting in this manner. It's just a waste of time. It's like, we don't need to be going around being triggered and freaking out all the time and wasting our intellectual real estate on nonsense. And I just see that happening so much.
So how did you get in this position? Who was your first touchstone? Was this an idea that you conceived of and you started trying to make contacts? Did you have contacts and you decided, hey, this would be cool to put together?
No, I never really came at it from the perspective this would be cool to put together. Is more, when I was going to university, I knew I wanted to produce live events, and I knew I wanted to do something that would help change the world for the better and start steering things in the direction of the way I want to see the world. Stopping people from hacking at the genitals of their infants and killing people, throwing them off a building because you don't agree with what they do with their genitals. And there's all of this horrible shit that goes on this planet, and I wanted to build a company and a business around going to war with those bad ideas, and that's how Pangburn philosophy came about. And then it fit well. The live events work well to combat that. And I probably my first biggest event was with Richard Dawkins and Matt Dillahunty in Vancouver. That was kind of one I had my mind on, that I really wanted to put those two thinkers together. And I know, and at that time, Matt really hadn't done much of anything big outside of his TV show. So that one was high on my radar, and it did very well. And that kind of helped me kickstart the business.
So was Matt Dillahunty your first contact? He was the one that you started managing. You're managing Matt Dillahunty now?
So I would say I was in touch with Richard first.
Okay, Dawkins.
Yeah. So I had formed the company. It was a very basic website to begin with, and Richard had taken a look well, I'd gotten in touch with Richard through his. I think there was a speakers bureau managing his speaking events at that time, and something had happened where Richard had read something on our website. They must have come to Richard to see if they were interested in doing a live event. And I think he had come to our website and he had read kind of my synopsis on Pangburn philosophy and what my goals were. And he sent me a note. I think it was like maybe 2 sentences long. And he said, "I love what you're doing," and a few other things, and it came from his personal email, which actually to me I thought it was like someone pulling my leg, and so I was like, interesting. And I didn't think much of it then, but eventually, well, they came back and said, "We'd love to do this event," but I initially thought that that couldn't have been him, but now that we are friends and we communicate lots, I know that's his same email that he used. So
That's great. I notice you've been putting out conversations that are relatively old, so it seems like you have a pretty extensive back catalog that really nobody knows about.
Yeah, we did the worldwide Celebration of Science and Reason tour last year with which featured Sam Harris as kind of the headliner, and then we had him with Krauss, Dawkins, Dillahunty. We had David Smalley and Sarah Hayter for one night.
Wow.
But we toured that through Canada. We had one date in London and then the rest in the States, but it was a highly successful tour. And we collected video content for every one of those events. So we're starting to release those slowly now, but they've been available for our patrons for quite some time.
Nice. So do you have anything that you want to say about do you have I know Jordan Peterson said that he was going to release the first event, the first debate with him and Sam Harris on his YouTube channel on Sunday. Have you made arrangements with him is he in control of the content now, or he's just really releasing it on your behalf, or?
No, this is all part of our agreement. Actually, as of this Friday, the content should be freely available to everyone.
It's going to be available on your channel as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Starting Friday. And obviously this is something we're not super public about because we want people to, hopefully they can support the content through Patreon or through any other way so that we can keep making these videos. But yeah, eventually all of our content will become available to the public. And I know there's this, I think it's a myth that we lose momentum in this movement by paywalling this content or delaying the release. But we need to sell tickets for these events to be able to do these events again. And this goes for, being able to cover the author fees, the people who are actually creating this content for us. So it's important that we don't do anything that's going to, screw us over and make it so that we can't do this anymore. We want to be able to bring thousands and thousands of different conversations to the world, all parts of the world. And, I guess what I'm saying is I think this idea that by delaying the content, it hurts this intellectual discourse movement. I think it's just people trying to come up with an argument as to why they should get the content free earlier.
I'm a capitalist. I know Jordan Peterson's a capitalist. I'm assuming Sam Harris is a capitalist. I think we're all capitalists here. I don't think anybody begrudges you making money. People do want access to the content, and I understand that. People also want to know like when they're going to have access to the content. It sounds like what you're saying though is you're worried if the content comes out at the same time as the live event, you're going to have trouble selling tickets to the live events. Is that the case?
Sure. Because if you look at, there's a few ways to do this. We've tried the live stream model before, even with the Sam Harris event, with him promoting it. And we attracted like, I think it was like 70 people to the stream.
And to the live event or to the stream?
To the live stream of the live event. So we had a sold out event, but the live stream itself, like lots of action, people saying, "Oh, I'll buy the live stream, make the live stream available." And we put the money in to have the live stream available.
And you lost money.
Hardly anyone. Oh yeah, big time.
So live streaming an event, a live event, is a bunch of work. I don't think many people know.
It is.
It's not just live streaming from your office or your bedroom.
No. Yeah, you need
multiple cameras. You have to have a producer. You have to switch cameras around. You have to do everything live. The way that you're doing an event like this is you're setting up multiple cameras. They're all recording, and then you're capturing everything, and you can edit something together after the fact when you have time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing too. It's like we have like 4 staff, and that includes myself. So we're not like, a Live Nation or a Netflix where we can produce like the best quality content you've ever seen and get it out there quickly. And it doesn't matter if we lose $500,000 on an event. It's like that would kill us. So it's important for us to be smart about how we manage this. And I think in the end, it's better for everyone if we're smart about this, as opposed to just not being smart and just not being able to do it anymore.
Yeah. The thing is, I think most people think that the content, like, I don't know that the amount of time that it takes for the content to be published, I don't know that interferes with your live shows. I think that people think if they lived close enough to go to a live show that they would go to a live show. But you're concentrating most on turning a profit on the live show, correct? And the other content is ancillary and just really an afterthought. So most people online are focused on that online content when that isn't even really the focus of your business.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to become like the hope is that the content itself will become just like a fraction of the business, but it will be part of the business model.
Right.
And then if the more value we get out of that part of the model, the higher the value of the content will be.
Right.
So like even on its own, without even filming the events are so expensive to produce, and we aren't seeing much of that kickback in like the net. So it's just been enough to barely survive, essentially. So we're creating a model. I mean, Pangburn, I'm working on this Pangburn TV app concept that may change the way we do things a little bit. Like we may go to the kind of the boxing pay-per-view level of pay-per-view offers. But that model only works because people know they're not going to be able to get that content anywhere else.
Exactly. Yeah. Otherwise they'll wait.
So it's like you can't have it both ways. If people know that the content is going to be out soon after the live event, you will get those even in the city where it's being produced that'll say, nah, I think I'll just sit this one out and I'll just watch it a week later. If they have to wait 3 or 4 months later, they're going to second guess that decision. And my hope is those people who decide, okay, I'm going to go to the live event, that the value they get, not just out of hearing the discussion, but being in the same room as other people who are interested in that content, the net well-being value that they get from coming to those events, and in a sense getting up and doing it because they're not going to have access to the content on YouTube or whatever platform right away. I just think the net result is better for everyone in the end.
Yeah, and I honestly, just from a business perspective, I don't see how you can really compete with the authors. I mean, really, live events is your only angle because, Sam Harris has done 2 podcasts with Jordan Peterson. It doesn't take anything for him to, Jordan Peterson calls him up, they record the conversation, and he's got a piece of content. Yeah, exactly. the only advantage that you have to get a piece of the action is to have the live shows. So,
yeah. And we have the podcast now, which is starting to do a lot better, and that's another source for us to communicate to the outside world. But the hope is to keep doing these live events, and I actually want to start producing events overseas in some poorer parts of the world that are going to be free access events, and that's something we're going to start rolling out those campaigns pretty soon here.
Man, so the security cost has got to be through the roof depending upon where you are. Yeah, that's another thing a lot of people don't think about. There's drivers, there's food costs, there's security, there's insurance. It's not like you can just call up the Orpheum and say, let me, what are you guys doing tonight? Is it okay if we swing by?
Yeah, they'll say, a big venue will say, oh, you want to book this venue, do you? Okay, you're going to need this 5 or 6 figure number down as a down payment just to challenge one of these dates, and you hope that you get it. So it's huge amounts of money to produce these kinds of events. And I know the majority of people appreciate that, the ones that are actually thinking clearly about this. And those are the ones that have been very supportive and very positive through all of our different media sources. And I want to help educate people further so that they understand this model and they can get on board with what we're trying to do.
I'm really, really excited to hear the Brett Weinstein, Richard Dawkins talk. I saw on Twitter that Richard Dawkins had tweeted out that he's reading Jonathan Haidt's book. And I kind of wondered if he was brushing up, because I know Jonathan Haidt and Brett Weinstein actually know one another, and they're both into the evolutionary psychology. And I've listened to the first 2 of the discussions between Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris, where Brett Weinstein is the moderator, and he brought so much to that conversation as far as the evolutionary aspect of it. So
yeah,
I think I would love to see the live show of that. Where is that going to take place? Where and when?
Well, the big top in Chicago, it'll be at the Chicago Theater. Mm-hmm. And that one is, I believe, the 23rd of October, 23rd or 24th. But, and yes, that'll be with Richard. It'll just be the 2 of them on stage, unmoderated, in discussion about evolution. And a lot of it will be how there's going to be a point of contention here, and it has to do with
I know there's going to be
religion as a virus or a bug versus religion as a utility.
Yeah, so you're up to speed on group selection and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, I've talked to, and Eric, Brett's brother, is really excited for this event. and when me and Eric talk, it's all he wants to talk about it, just in anticipation of what's going to happen at this event. There is a possibility that this could be the most important live event from a scientific perspective.
I don't.
I hate to say in human history, but it just might be. The reason being is because textbooks might be adjusted based on some discoveries that could be made in this conversation.
Now, I also have communicated with David Sloan Wilson, and David Sloan Wilson is the one in Haidt's book that puts forward the argument that religion is a utility. I don't know where Dawkins is at on that. Like, you're right. Dawkins could literally change his position in this debate. That would be crazy, but Dawkins is much, much older now. And
so I think the thing is whether it's a necessary utility or just a utility. And Brett is probably going to argue that it is a necessary utility. And I do not think that Dawkins will go there with him. And I would disagree with Brett that I think what he's getting at is that art is a necessary utility for human beings. And I put religion and belief in God into the art category because
that's an interesting argument, because you could very well make the case that we don't need art, that art is superficial, that we can live without it. We need food, water, shelter, right? Art is a luxury, kind of.
There's it would be interesting to come across a civilization that didn't do anything artistic. They would, I think it would be much like a robot civilization, just standing, waiting for their next order,
waiting for the invaders, waiting for the artists to come in and take over,
waiting for the guys in the short jean shorts and the bucket of paint.
If they have a good coastline, they're had.
Exactly.
So, well, you've been very generous with your time. I think this has been a good conversation. Do you want to plug anything? How many events do you have on the schedule? I know the historical one is in October.
Yeah, we got lots coming up. Right next week here, we got September 5th with Sam Harris and Brian Greene. This is the first time those two will be talking together.
Wow, Brian Greene he's a evolutionary biologist, correct? Or no, he is a
theoretical physicist.
Yeah, that's it. He did a series on PBS.
Yes, he did, and he's amazing. Also appeared in some Hollywood films as well. He's brilliant. I just had him on the podcast, and I think I asked Brad. Brian. I made it a point to ask him what he thought of Richard's approach to religious dogma and religiosity in general. Later on in Richard's career, and Brian is not a fan of his approach, and so I think this will be an interesting conversation point for Sam.
Brian Greene is more on the religion as utility side. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think it's just he's very left thinking in the sense that you have to meet people where they are.
Oh yeah.
If you have someone who's been severely indoctrinated by, let's say, Catholicism, going at
see, that's
just based on what's going on, and
those are like the trigger words. That's like caustic. You just like all the Catholic viewers just tuned out. They're like, what? Exactly. I'm indoctrinated. I am very much with Brian Greene. I think you and I are I think I'm very much with Brian Greene. I am more towards the religion as utility side. I'm much more towards the Brett Weinstein side. But I mean, this is how society moves forward, like a little bit at a time. You got to have these conversations. For too long, it was only the aristocracy that was having these conversations and
Right.
dictating how, theology from above. Now it's much more interesting that everyone's involved.
With the aristocracy, even if some great ideas came forward, the next question was, how is this going to affect my wallet? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that hindered a lot of progress in the intellectual realm. But I'm not sure. I think we're past that now. I think at least what I know now is that it's becoming popular to think, and I've been saying this a lot. There's this huge sway, I think, happening in the zeitgeist where people are demanding good explanations that are founded in reason, as opposed to just being told what is.
See, this is one of the complaints that I actually have against many of the popular atheists is that I think Jordan Peterson is actually delivering those reasonable arguments, and I think a lot of them are being overlooked. I very much see Jordan Peterson, and I know Jordan Peterson can be. He's kind of like this Rorschach inkblot test where a lot of people can see what they want in what he says. But me being on the science side, I see what he's saying in terms of materialist, rationalist perspective, very much in line with what a Sam Harris would think, or what a Brett Weinstein would think, or what a Richard Dawkins would think. I think he's providing answers that are more towards the secular utility of religion side, but he's giving good reasons why there is a secular utility to it.
Yeah, I haven't heard any of those good reasons, and I've listened to them pretty damn close. I had him on the podcast, and we've had many discussions off the record. And basically, I think I almost
is he trying to convince you, or are you trying to convince him?
Well, no, we just get into it without any goals, I guess. We just want to have a conversation. But what I tell Jordan is that what he's talking about, this kind of utility, is art, and when he's talking about this metaphorical belief in God, or that God exists metaphorically, I just equate that to any mode of art or storytelling, although it can be very powerful, like what I call the God illusion. But I think what he's talking about is just art, and when I boil down what Jordan Peterson has to say about God, Jordan Peterson is actually, in fact, an atheist based on how I define atheism.
No, I think he's an atheist too. I'm with you there.
Yeah.
I'm with you there 100%. Like I haven't seen him put forward anything. He believes in the concept of God. I've heard that much. But I guess you're really butting up against whether or not these stories being true is important. And I think you and I probably both agree that they're not factually correct in the scientific sense. But the value that people place on things that are real is far more immense. I mean, it's the difference between forged art and original art, because the original art has the story that is real with it, and the forged art doesn't. I mean, the forged art obviously has its own story, but it's nowhere near the same as the original art.
Sure, so, but it's disingenuous if somebody says, does God exist? And your answer is, my answer is, I don't know, if someone asks me that, and that makes me an atheist. But
isn't that an agnostic though? I mean,
well, no, it's if someone says, if someone poses it, does God exist? The atheistic position is, I don't see sufficient reason to believe that a God does exist, but I'm not going to make the positive claim that a God does not exist.
Okay.
Yeah, because once you become the claim maker, the burden of proof is on you.
Oh, okay.
So
I got you.
yeah, it's but anyways, yeah, it's like if your response is, well, it depends on what you mean by exists, like Jordan often says, it's like, no, I'm asking you in the general sense. It's like, I have an apple here. This apple exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. In the sense that we understand what we generally mean by exists. And now I have a God here, and does this God exist? And one way to expose this hole in this idea of God being outside of the artistic realm came up at the Matt Dillahunty Jordan Peterson event. The first question off the bat was asked to Jordan from the audience, and the question was, Jordan, if human beings were to cease to exist instantly right now, would God still exist? And Jordan spent a good like 30 seconds to a minute thinking, and in the end he said, I don't think I can answer that question. So I think all I would like to see from Jordan's reasoning on this is just to say that when I'm talking about God, I'm not talking about existence in the way that we're all I'm just talking about that the story aspect, the artistic charge that you can get out of stories and out of ideas exists. And Sam Harris doesn't disagree with that. But if you watch in the Dublin and London videos that we're releasing on Friday to our patrons, you'll see I would say more in the London video that it really becomes clear exactly where that disconnect is, and Sam presses Jordan really hard on it, and there's a really interesting exchange about halfway through the event.
Those are going to be available for patrons on Friday?
Yes.
Okay. It's very interesting, and I know that you and others really want to press Jordan to take a side, but you understand how that puts him in a precarious situation just tribalistically. I think I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying, but as a clinical psychologist, I mean, he's probably done 30 years of clinical psychology where he's used religion as a powerful tool to help people get their lives together. And if he takes a position and steps on one side or the other of that tribal line, I mean, it's very difficult for him to be able to do that.
It can be difficult to stand and tell people what's true, but I mean, as a clinical psychologist, I not that I'm going to sit here and tell Jordan Peterson what to do as a clinical psychologist, but I think there are modes of truth that can be engaged to satisfy that same connection. I mean, my connection to art, and happens to be because I'm a pianist, to the piano, is very much how one would describe a religious connection to a belief in the afterlife or a belief in God. So that's why the Pangburn philosophy is set up. Let art and science inspire. There's the artistic side and the scientific side, and I think both of those sides are required.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, that's probably a good place to end it then. You've been very generous with your time, and this conversation has been very interesting. If you ever want to discuss more, I am well read on this topic. You're obviously well read on this topic too. So these are fascinating debates, and I thank you for taking the time to put them together and letting us all enjoy them.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate your time as well.
Yeah, cool.